Along with Jeremy Poplin and Scott File, I am Colby Daniels. Dusty Dvoracek joins us via the Blitz Hotline. Dusty, hope you had a great weekend. It was a busy weekend here in the state of Oklahoma. Thunder playoff basketball back in OKC and the Oklahoma spring game. How was the weekend, my friend?
Happy Monday. I'm sure you don't want my full-blown breakdown of the Thunder. Talk a little bit more about the Sooner spring game. But I do have to say this. What a crowd. What a scene last night in Oklahoma City when we had three blowouts, one of them being my Mavericks, leading up to that one last night. And what I think most people thought might have been the biggest blowout, it was by far the best game. And boy, SGA coming up clutch there at the end of that ball game. What a finish and what a start to the Oklahoma City Thunder being back in the NBA postseason. That was electric. And boy, Oklahoma City, Loud City, delivers once again. That was a great, great scene for our city and our state last night.
One of the best playoff atmospheres in all of the NBA, and so glad that we get to see it once again because it's been a lean few years here in OKC. In Norman on Saturday, we had a move start time due to the weather, which I don't know how much of a factor that played into what we watched, but I thought overall a pretty entertaining spring game, and I would imagine the coaching staff was pretty happy overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the crowd too, man, because we didn't know exactly what the weather was going to be. Early forecasts were it was going to be super windy, potential of rain. They bumped that kick time back an hour and a half. And still north of 45,000 fans, like almost the entire lower bowl was filled. So big shout out to Sooner Nation. I thought that I was just at Baton Rouge the week before, and I'd say there was about a 4 multiplier of Sooner fans compared to Tiger fans. So I thought they brought it. And I thought overall it was a really good spring game. Like early, it was the offense that had their moments. Then I thought once the defense settled in, they had some of their moments. A lot of the names that we've discussed over spring, I thought for the most part really emerged and showed you why there's been kind of this buzz coming out of camp. And I think there's enough to praise your players on and enough to say, you know what, we got a lot of work to on the other side. So I thought, really in the end, that's what you want. And then with that kind of wacky scoring system like all these have, it came down to a final possession with the 5'5" Chapman McCown finding the end zone, doing his best Deuce Vaughn imitation as he dived for the near pylon and got the offensive win. Again, like you never know what you're going to get out of a spring game, but I thought it delivered, man. I thought that both sides of the ball stepped up and had moments throughout the course of the day.
I don't think we mentioned McCown as maybe our Charlie Moore Award winner, the surprise star of the game, scoring the game winner. But that's what the award's all about, right? Somebody that comes out of nowhere and has the big moment in the spring game. But in all seriousness, I kind of feel like Deion Burks stole the show, right? And I would imagine after all is said and done, he's probably the headliner, Dusty, of what we watched on Saturday and the expectation for what he brings to this offense in 2024.
No doubt. And I feel like you and I have talked about him a lot. This goes back to winter conditioning when everybody just raved about his competitiveness, the way he attacked drills and even leading various drills. And two things stand out to me. He's an excellent route runner, and he is explosive with the football in his hands. So it's like he can beat you both ways, right? And I thought that he showed that. I think it was Makari Vickers, the one that Jackson Arnold just missed. They're in man-to-man coverage and runs a great route, gets behind him and, just past him. And then I think also, aside from the 2 long touchdowns, a couple of busts in coverage, I thought, getting him the ball in the perimeter and just letting him go in space. I think that he is a complete player. And just think about this. They were down arguably their next 3 best wide receivers. You didn't have Nick Anderson. You didn't have Andrell Anthony. You don't have Jalil Farouk. So once they have their full complement, this is going to be as deep and loaded a wide receiver core as Oklahoma's fielded in a while. But I think it's pretty clear for me and most people around that program, Deion Burks is going to be the number 1. And Seth Littrell is going to get him the football in a variety of ways and put a lot of pressure on opposing defenses. And if you want to try to take him away and you want to put a safety over the top, they're going to draw one-on-ones elsewhere that they feel very confident they can beat you. But I thought it was great to see. that chemistry between Jackson Arnold and Burks that's already formed, a lot of trust there. And the guy is going to be a problem for SEC defenses next year.
On this week of the NFL draft, I've heard a lot of people say that Deion Burks is going to be a guy next year, this time that we are talking about in terms of the NFL draft and being a next level guy. And not only does he come in and potentially becomes the star of that receiver group, as we've talked about several times, that receiving group is so deep and talented, but I like the fact that there's such a great mix of the types of receivers that you have now, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing is you can have a whole bunch of receivers, but if they all kind of do the same thing, maybe you can't utilize or maximize the talent at a receiver in a receiver room. With this group, I mean, you kind of have a really good mixed bag of different types of receivers. You have big guys, you have speed guys, you have slot guys. I mean, you have all around guys. It's such a good collection and a little bit of something to utilize in about everything you could possibly want offensively.
I think Emmett Jones deserves a lot of credit. I mean, there was obviously a couple of years ago the situation with Kel Gundy. They had the interim coach that stepped in, and when they went and got Emmett Jones, I think he's been a game changer, both in recruiting, but I think even more so the development piece. Being around Drake Stoops, Drake's told me here this offseason as he's getting ready for the NFL draft, Emmett Jones made him immensely better, just understanding how to run routes, how defense are going to defend you, the subtleties, the nuances. And to me, you can see that within this wide receiving core. So you're 100% right, though. You've got it's like different, what is it, Baskin Robbins. What do they have, like 42 flavors or whatever? It's kind of what you have with this receiver core. You've got a little bit of everything. But I think Emmett Jones has kind of become the architect. And what's most important is maximizing and squeezing the orange, getting the most out of that talent. And I think he's done a really nice job with that.
How did you feel like the quarterbacks played overall? I know Jackson Arnold obviously had a couple of big connections. Michael Hawkins, the statistics wouldn't necessarily say that it was a shining day, but overall, the quarterback group, what'd you think?
I thought Jackson Arnold looked really good. The two deep touchdowns are great. I like that over route that Burks finding that space and him hitting him in stride. Two plays stand out to me, though, and they're not going to be highlight reel plays that are going to be all over social media. But there was an early, I believe it was a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, where he steps up in the pocket and no one's open down the field, and it's him and a linebacker, and it's a foot race to the sidelines, and he picks up the first down. I just thought that was a good decision. Then there's later in the game, the drive that really featured Gavin Sawchuk, where it was 3rd and 13, I believe, and there was a shot play. I think it was a deep post over the middle. That was his number one. It wasn't there as well defended. He bought his time. He surveyed the field, and he just hit his check down. And it was just a little 5-6 yard throw, and Gavin Sawchuk went and got the first down. But to me, that's growth, that's maturity, and that's finding a way to move the chains. And to me, those are game-winning football plays, and that's playing the quarterback position. That's what Seth Luttrell wants. I never once saw the ball get in harm's way, which I think is another big added bonus because Jackson Arnold, he's got a gunslinger mentality. Look, he believes in his talents. He thinks and knows he can make every throw, even when throws aren't there. And I never saw him take a chance that he shouldn't have taken. And that is playing the quarterback position at a high level. So I know he was only 10 to 20. He missed the deep shot in the first play. He missed Burks on that other deep route whenever he beats Vickers. But I thought overall I was very happy with what I saw from Jackson Arnold. Michael Hawkins, again, I think you saw the elusiveness. You saw one time a design quarterback run. When he puts his foot on the accelerator, he is explosive. If I'm being completely honest, I felt for him a little bit because I thought that second team offensive line had 3 true freshmen out there. I'm not making excuses for anybody, but I would have liked to seen him get a chance maybe with that one offensive line and more the one receivers at times. But, it is what it is. I thought you got a glimpse as to what he's capable of, especially his first drive. I thought that first drive was kind of methodical. He made some nice throws, made some nice plays. I think it was Carrion, the big 6'6" freshman that he found a couple of times. I feel really good about where Hawkins is. Probably wasn't nearly as impressive in the scrimmage as what he's shown throughout the course of spring, but I thought he showed a couple of glimpses. But very happy with Jackson Arnold. I don't know how you felt about it, but I felt that
Yeah.
you can really see he is the leader of this football team. His confidence is clearly there, and his decision making I thought was what stuck out the most to me on Saturday.
His ability and talent isn't in question, right? So I mean, like, we know he's capable of making the wow plays. We know he's capable of making big throws and doing all the stuff that'll make the highlight reel. But to your point, I think when you can just see him play the position in a smart way, that's the biggest worry about him this year, right? Is just being able to not make too many of those young quarterback mistakes while he's learning and getting comfortable in that position as a first year starter. So I think it's a great point by you. You did mention that offensive line, and that's really the biggest question mark of the team. So we don't really necessarily have a good gauge of what the starting five is going to look like, much less the depth. So I understand Michael Hawkins' situation with the number twos out there, but what did you think of that first team offensive line and at least the five guys that are currently in place?
I thought the interior three played really well on that first group. I actually give Josh Bates some credit. He struggled at times so far this spring. I thought he played pretty well. I thought Fabechi Wiwu, I thought you really saw some of the power. A couple times, some gap scheme stuff where he was the puller coming around and just moving guys off the ball. Jacob Sexton, they've condensed him down to some guard. I think they'd like to play him at tackle. They're good. They just added the SMU center, so that's going to, provide some stability there on the interior. A guy who started a ton of games. I think he's had over 2,400 snaps in his career. And I know just a guy that they're going to be able to rely upon. So I think that was a big get. They want to add one more. They'd like to get a tackle. And if they can, grab an offensive tackle out of this group, I think that allows them to move Jacob Sexton back to where they feel most comfortable with him at offensive tackle as well. So it's still a work in progress. Remember, you're still going to get Garen Hatchett back, the Washington transfer who wasn't available here this spring. That's one to keep an eye on. And at some point you will get Troy Everett, who, again, now all of a sudden you've got a center who's got experience. Everett can play both center and guard. So he played some guard, quite a bit of guard last year. Even if you get him back, late fall camp, by the time you get into October, I think all of a sudden now you feel better about the overall depth on your offensive line. But look, it's no secret. They are thin. They've already added one body. They want to add one more body. And hopefully they're able to do that because I do think they're going to need as many quality players they can get. I think Michael Tarquin's fine. I think he's a solid player. I don't know if I think he's some great offensive tackle, the USC transfer, but I thought he did a respectable job in there. So I actually thought the O-line was better than I expected early, especially the first group, because I didn't have great expectation. Thought they opened up some nice holes on the interior. I thought they gave Jackson Arnold some pretty good time. Throughout the course of the day, the lack of depth, I thought, revealed itself, and they struggled with the defensive line, especially that second group. But I was actually pretty impressed with what I saw from that first offensive line, especially in the first half of the game.
One of the things I noted in my notes while I was watching this that I wanted to bring up to you, and it just said Caleb Hicks. The running back position obviously is one where I think we're looking for some depth and who's going to emerge as that number two guy. And Caleb Hicks ran the ball well on Saturday. I know this isn't like the all-out type of setting that maybe you see him thrive in the most, but I thought just given the scenario, he ran the ball hard. I thought he looked good, and maybe he's put himself in position to earn some carries this season.
Boy, he looks good in a uniform, doesn't he? I mean, he's got muscles on top of muscles. I thought he showed good vision and then burst. There was that 4th and 1 they went for, and then I thought patience as well. They had another counter that they ran later where I thought he allowed the blocks to set up. He had, he waited for it and then bam, punched the gas when he needed to. I thought of the running backs, Sawchuk looked good in a very limited role, but I thought outside of him, I thought Caleb Hicks definitely looked the best. We got a chance to see a little bit of Sam Franklin. It was fine. Some Xavier Robinson, of course, Chapman McCown. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Caleb Hicks is a good looking player. And I know that DeMarco Murray feels really good about him. And I don't know what the heck's going on with Javonte Barnes. I mean, it's just like we were just told that he's healthy, for the first time, and then he's not out there playing. So I don't know exactly what the backstory on that is, but give Caleb Hicks a lot of credit, man. He had a really good spring. He came on strong down the stretch, and I thought he put his stamp on that spring game. Now, one reminder, Taylor Tatum, the number one running back in the country, will be showing up this summer. He's an elite baseball player. I do think that they're still trying to gauge and figure out if and where he's drafted, exactly what his plan is going to be. Does he go the baseball route? Does he come to Oklahoma and play running back? But talking with DeMarco Murray, he assured me they sure are hopeful and think that he will be at Oklahoma. And if he is, he's going to factor into that running back room too. I know it's a freshman, but he's a very, very talented freshman. And I think that his skill set is exactly what they're looking for. So I would say that you'd have to throw his name into that running back room mix as well.
Dusty Dvoracek joins us via the Blitz hotline talking OU spring game. Dusty, the defense, we've talked a lot about competitive depth with this group, and I thought that was very much on display Saturday, almost in every position group, right? It feels like they have much more competitive depth than they've had across the board in a long, long time.
Yeah, especially two rooms that stick out to me. It's linebacker and safety. I thought Kobe McKenzie played great. He still, I think, got a ways to go in coverage, but downhill as a linebacker, I thought that his eyes were better, no false steps. You can get those choppy feet and false step and be out of position. I thought that he fit up the run very well, powerful. He is a heavy-hatted thumper, and I thought we had a chance to see that several times. Kip Lewis is going to be I think he's just going to continue to get better. I told you this on Friday, but Lewis Carter is the name that really has come to the forefront. Coach Venables basically told us he'll be garnering starter snaps. They've been so impressed with him. I thought he was around the ball a lot. I thought Samuel Omosigo, I thought that he looked really good moving around. Jaron Kanik made a couple of plays out there, and Danny Stutzman obviously is just, he's a force and a guy that just continued to get better, especially as a leader. And they're even working Deshaun McCullough in at some will linebacker. He'll play that cheetah role when he's more in the box. They want to try to limit him in space, but I just rattled off about 7 linebackers 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They were having to play Deshaun White out of position. They were having to play a lot of guys out of position because they didn't have any bodies. They did not have any depth. And that's just not the case anymore. And I feel the same way about safety. No Billy Bowman, no problem in this game. I thought Robert Spears-Jennings looked good. And the 2 freshmen I mentioned to you the other day, Michael Boganowski. Now, Boganowski looked like he busted that first coverage. I saw quarters. He came down. He should have been in that spot. He's a true freshman playing his first big-time moment, first possession. But you saw him come down and lower the boom, making some big hits, sticking his face in there. He's 6'2", 215, and he's very physical. Reggie Powers is just instinctive. They threw a screen. He was downhill right now, diagnosing it, tackling in the open field. These are true freshmen that are going to factor in immediately and garner minutes. And Peyton Bowen is just continuing to get better and better. It's just 3-4 years ago, I didn't feel good about any of the safeties. And I'm not trying to dog anybody out. Yeah. Now it's pick a guy, because a lot of these guys, I think, have a chance to be really good players. So the competitive depth, that's a buzz phrase that we've heard from Coach V a lot, but it's real. And the emphasis on recruiting and hitting on the transfer portal, it's such a stark contrast with this staff and the previous staff, what they're identifying, what they're bringing in. And I think it's really showing. And I don't know how you felt, but just the 2 guys that I expect are going to be the starting corners, and Kenai Walker and Des Malone, just the length and natural feel at corner, it just feels better than what it's felt at the cornerback spot in a while. So those back 2 levels of the defense, I think if you're a Sooner fan, it wasn't perfect. Again, they made some mistakes, but I think you've got to feel really good about where they're at. And I think you also have to remember they were super vanilla. I was told 4, maybe 5 calls is all they went the entire day. And, talking with both staffs, that has not been the case throughout the course of the spring, but they just wanted to water it down, make it very vanilla, and go out there and just play. So back 2 levels look great. I do think though, Colby, like they're looking to add players up front. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. I think they feel really good about the Louisville defensive tackle Lowell. I am anticipating we hear a commitment from him here in the coming days. And Dominique Williams was in Norman until Sunday late afternoon. Now he's headed to Texas this week, and I think Oregon and A&M might also be on the list. But they feel good about the way the visit went. They're going to be very competitive to do what they have to do to get him. They want to add 2 D tackles. I think they feel really confident about one. There's another kid, Barrow, out of Michigan State, to keep an eye on as well. But I did like what I saw from Jaden Jackson. I think people got a chance to see his power a couple times. He overwhelmed the offensive guard. I saw one where he split a double team. I tried to point out on the broadcast, made a play in the backfield. I thought Stone had a couple of rushes where, he pushed the pocket. I still think technically he's got a ways to go. Grayson Halton, to me, was the best of the defensive tackles. And what I love about Grayson, he's just gotten better and better every year. He's up to 296, so just under 300. He's playing about 285 last year. So he's really worked hard on putting on his weight, and he hasn't given up any quickness. There was a couple of times where he was moving laterally, and I thought he had really good lateral quickness and still the ability to get in the backfield, penetrate, and disrupt. And then they were running some good inside games, some what I would call twist games, some tons with the interior tackles. And I thought you could see that burst to the quarterback flash from him a couple times as well. So the problem I have with that spot, and I'm as high as anybody on Jaden Jackson and David Stone, big picture long term. But going into the SEC, you need 5 or 6 D tackles that you're going to have to be able to rotate throughout the course of a season, if not a game. And to rely on 2 true freshmen that much, I think is lofty. Dejon Terry's the only D tackle that started a game at Oklahoma right now. So they just need some experience. I think they need some size. And I would say that right now in the portal, that is the number one item of business they're trying to figure out as they close out this spring season.
To go back to the linebackers and safeties for a moment, I mean, you mentioned all those names. I'm watching that spring game thinking, I don't know how they get all these guys on the field, right? I mean, there's so much quality depth there. Lewis Carter, to me, is right out of the mold of every linebacker I feel like Brent had at Clemson. I mean, size, speed, combination, just the way he plays, it feels like he's just another one in line of all those guys that Brent had playing at Clemson that became All-Americans and went on to the next level. And the safeties, I mean, you didn't even have Billy Bowman out there. And to your point, I mean, you didn't miss him because there were playmakers in abundance. I think, corner is an interesting spot for me. I think there's talent there, but it's always one of those positions that, once you get into play, you figure out what you have. And then to your point, the defensive line in general, I would even throw the edges in there. While I think there's talent, what are those guys going to get consistent pressure this season? But Grayson Halton, to your point, was the best one to me on the interior. And I mean, you can never have enough, right? No matter how many you have, it's not enough. And if you can add via the portal, you always have to do that. But that's going to be really, I think, the separator in terms of how well they're able to make that transition to the SEC. And also, the opportunities for that talented back end to make plays. I mean, if your defensive line is breaking down, you can have all the talent in the world in the second and third levels, but it's ultimately not going to save your rear end.
Ethan Downs, by the way, I thought he looked quicker. He made a nice couple of plays on the perimeter. I think he's leaned up just a little bit. I liked what I saw from him. There was 2 rushes in particular from R. Mason Thomas that stood out. He hit, I can't remember who the tackle was, but he went on an inside move. He really hit a very good speed rush outside, got the tackle, the kick, and was just smooth coming inside. He's their best pure pass rusher. He has got to be consistent in getting after the quarterback and applying pressure. If he can do that, to me, he's got, as a third down player, game-changing type of potential. But it's like you said, it's got to be consistent. Like, I like the depth Trace Ford provides. I thought Caden Woolard did some pretty good stuff. I still think PJ's a ways away, and I see too much stiffness. But to me, one of the real keys for next year is R. Mason Thomas. Can he continue throughout this summer and then really into fall camp? Can he continue to improve? Can he continue to progress? And then can he stay healthy and stay on the field? If he can, I think that can potentially help this defense, this third down defense, immensely, because you know as well as I do, you've got to have dudes on the edge on third down that can just flat out win. And I don't know outside of him how many guys I say, yep, I feel very good every time on third down that he's going to win. He possesses that type of potential. He showed glimpses and flashes of that on Saturday. If he can do that with more regularity, I think that's going to really, really help this defense next fall.
There's no doubt. Before we get out of here, the draft is on Thursday. We'll talk a lot more draft when you join us Wednesday afternoon. But for the Dallas Cowboys, who's at the top of your list as we begin draft week?
I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit. I'm looking in that first round offensive tackle, offensive line. I like Amarius Mims. I like Tyler Guyton. I think those would probably be the top two guys on my list. And then I'm either Jonathan Brooks or I'm Trey Benson. And honestly, I'm good with either one at pick 56. So if they came away with any collection of those four players in the top two rounds, I'm feeling pretty good as a Dallas Cowboy fan. What about you?
Yeah, it's still offensive line, I think, for me, and there's a bunch of names that I'm probably okay with. There's some I like a little more than others, but I mean, they have to add to the offensive line if this team's going to go anywhere. There is some growing, I guess, some growing confidence that they like the Kingsley, I can't say his last name, tackle out of BYU.
Yeah.
And maybe he's in the mix in the first round. And somebody told me the other day that they might like Xavier Worthy, which that might make me throw something out the window if they were to go Xavier Worthy. Not because I dislike him, but it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me in that position.
Why'd you have to say that? Us having such a good Monday, Cole. I mean, again, I agree with you. Like Xavier Worthy, great speed, take the top off of defense. That's the last thing that I'm worried about with this Cowboys team at this moment.
Right.
So, and if you're going to go Texas receiver at that pick, give me Adonai Mitchell, for goodness sakes. Like, I know that they have completely different skill sets, but I think Mitchell is a much more well-rounded NFL type wide receiver than Xavier Worthy. So, but no, it's got to be offensive line. I think offensive tackle makes too much sense. And we got to have a running back in the second round, right? Like if they don't look to address those two position groups in the top two picks, I'd be pretty surprised.
Yeah, I agree. If they go Xavier Worthy, then we can officially say that Jerry has made the full transition to Al Davis, and you know what that means. Like it's time to cash in the chips. Dusty, we'll catch up on Wednesday, my friend.
Sounds good, buddy. Talk to you then.
Dusty Dvoracek joining us via the Blitz Hotline. I'm Colby Daniels, along with Jeremy Poplin and Scott File. We'll take a timeout. You're listening to the Blitz 1170, and we are streaming on the Blitz 1170 app.